Okay, so about 3 months ago, I think it was, I made a deck profile for my Dinomorphia deck, including the side deck. Some updates have been made to it since the last video, so I'm going to be posting an update video. Part of this is because of the ban list update. This deck has been adjusted for the most recent ban list, which it was not updated for, which, well, it came out, the ban list came out, more than 3 months ago, so time for an update. So we're going to start off with the main deck. And you're going to want 3 copies of Dinomorphia Theresia. Dinomorphia Theresia, when she's normal or special summoned, can take any Dinomorphia trap and add it, or not even add it, just set it directly onto your field from your deck, allowing this to bypass, Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, and even Droll and Lockbird. If you get Droll and Lockbirded, you can still set the trap off of Theresia, or if you set a trap off Theresia, it doesn't trigger Droll and Lockbird because the card never entered your hand. Your opponent will be able to would still be able to chain certain hand traps to this, but nothing you really care about. Theresia is the bread and butter of the deck, and that's why we run her at 3. She's a really good card. Up next, I personally run 3 copies of Diplos. People do argue you only need 2, and I see the argument. However, I like having the 3rd copy, so this way I have the 3rd name. Because one problem that this deck does have is that it only has 2 main deck monsters, so I like to max out on both. Theresia you max out on because she's a good card. Diplos I max out on because I need the names. Not even kidding. If there was another Dinomorphia name in the deck, like in the main deck, I probably would only be running this at 2 because, don't get me wrong, Foolish Burial and Foolish Burial Goods is a good effect. It's just not the best. Then we are running the dinosaur mandated 1 copy of Miscellaneousaurus. I genuinely believe that this card could come back to 3 and not much would change. We have field spells that do what this guy does but better at 3. Why can we not have the dinosaur? Why can we not have the incorrect dinosaur at 3? Please! Up next is 3 copies of Wannabe. She has a pretty interesting effect. During the end phase, you can send her from the field or hand to the graveyard. And then, depending on how many unused spell and trap card zones your opponent has, you excavate that many cards. You then take one of those traps and set it to your field. But during the next end phase, if it's still in the field, you have to send it to the graveyard. And then all the other cards go to the bottom of the deck in any order you want. She's such a good card, and she's an underrated card because she really only helps trap-based decks because she has to set a trap, not a spell or trap. And then we're running 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. We really don't need any other hand traps than this, than the 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Spring and the Miscellaneousaurus, because, I guess technically Wannabe is a trap card too, a hand trap too. But just with the way this deck works, you really don't need to worry about certain hand traps, like running certain hand traps. Now, there are certain hand traps that you basically need to run for certain matchups, and I have those in the side deck because Droll and Lockbird, Droll and Lockbird is a good card. I don't really think main decking it is a good idea. However, there are certain decks that just die to Droll, so I put it in the side deck for those matchups. Up next, we have the best card in the deck, Dinomorphia Frenzy. This takes 1 card from your extra deck and 1 card from your main deck and bins them both to Fusion Summon. This is such a good card, and like all Dinomorphia trap cards, it will cost you half your life points to use. However, paying half your life points as cost in this deck would be the same as giving Slifer a Slifer deck. draw 2 cards as cost. We want to get rid of our life points. Up next, we have 3 copies of Dinomorphia Domain. This is Branded Fusion as a trap card that costs half our life points. It's just a good card. There's not much else to say about it. Also, I have a mat now. For these, for any of my I will be using this mat for any of my in-paper deck profiles, just because I love the evolutions. They're so cute. Up next, we have 2 copies of Dinomorphia Alert. Dinomorphia Alert is a, I guess technically it'd be considered called a haunted. You can summon any number of up to 2 Dinomorphia monsters from your graveyard whose total levels do not exceed 8. You can pay half your life points to use it, and for the rest of the turn, you can't summon non-Dinomorphia monsters, but that doesn't matter. You just flip this during your opponent's end phase, summon out Theresia and Diplos, and then you can make whatever rank 4 you need to make. Also, there are Diplos's and Theresia's effects will go off on the summon, so yeah. Just infinite advantage. Then we have the 3 copies of Dinomorphia Intact. This is such a good card. If you attempt to use Dinomorphia Frenzy and your opponent tries to Ash Blossom it, you flip Intact and tell them to no. On top of that, not only can this negate any monster effect, literally any monster effect, as long as you control a Dinomorphia card. Dinomorphia card, not Dinomorphia monster. For the rest of the turn, any battle damage you would take becomes half your current life points instead. So you just can't die in battle either. Then we have the 1 copy of Brute. You want to send this to the graveyard off of Diplos for another card that I'll get to when I get to the extra deck. Actually, no, I'll explain it now. Kentragina here can copy a trap card in your graveyard. You're running Brute as a Diplos mill for Kentragina. That's why you're only running it at 1. A lot of people who don't play Dinomorphia underestimate this card. Because on paper, it looks bad. In practice, it's really good. Being able to just, whenever the hell you want, say, yeah, that card you had there is dead. Dinomorphia Sonic. By paying half your life points and destroying a Dinomorphia card monster you control, you can negate a spell or trap. Pretty useful, but not as useful as Frenzy. If it didn't require you to pop a Dinomorphia you control, it would probably be a lot better. Now, yeah, all the Dinomorphias float, but it still is a bit cumbersome to have to pop a card we control in order to use it. And I'm about to sound like a hypocrite in a second. So, 2 copies of Trap Tracks. I almost said Dinomorphia Tracks. Anyway, this pops a monster you control to set a normal trap. I know, that kind of I'm sounding like a hypocrite. Like, Dinomorphia Sonic is cumbersome to use because it requires you to pop a card. But this we can use proactively, not reactively. So if we need to pop a Dinomorphia monster for whatever reason, we can use Trap Tracks to do it, and we get a thing out of it. And the reason why I'm specifically using Trap Tracks over Trap Tricks is because all the Dinomorphia monsters float. The level 4 ones, by banishing a trap, they can summon another level 4. And then the fusions can summon a Dinomorphia of a lower level. So you flip over Trap Tracks, you pop your Diplos to get your trap card. You then banish the Trap Tracks to revive Theresia, getting yourself another trap card. I went plus, what, 2? Because Trap Tracks isn't doing anything after it uses its effect, so I don't care that it got banished. So I went, like, plus 2 off of that. Up next, we have 3 copies of Ferret Flames. Ferret Flames is the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm sorry, I don't know. Anyway, this card's really good. In Dinomorphia, this card is insanely powerful. because it forces our opponent to shuffle back monsters they control until the attack points of all the monsters on their field doesn't exceed our life points. It affects the player, not the monster. So therefore, not even cards like Full Armor Master or the Arrival Cybersat Ignister, any problematic card that has attack points, this card can deal with. If it has attack points and it's a problem, Ferret Flames is the solution. Solemn Judgment is Solemn Judgment. It makes us pay half our life points to negate a thing. I don't think I need to elaborate any further. Up next, we have Triple Imperm. It's Infinite Impermanence. Up next, we have 2 copies of Fossil Dig. The main reason why people say that you only need 2 Diplos is because you can run 3 Fossil Dig. I prefer 2 Fossil Dig and 3 Diplos. Again, for the reason of having names for fusion summoning. And then 3 Super Polymerization. Super Polymerization isn't exactly the best way to be running this deck right now. Unfortunately, I don't have the money required to buy a Fiendsmith package. I would rather be playing a Fiendsmith package than Super Polymerization targets. However, Super Polymerization still has some pretty neat applications outside of just being a board breaker. There have been times where my opponent's like, okay, use X, Y, and Z card, target Rex turn to just deal with Rex turn. I then flip over Super Polymerization and fuse off that Rex term into another Rex term, and it's so funny. So, while yeah, Super Polymerization definitely isn't the best card for the deck at this point in time, it's still not a bad card to be running, so that's why I'm still running Super Polymerization in the deck. That and just I can't afford Fiendsmith cards. Up next, we have the Extra deck. I am running 2 copies of Kentragina. She requires 2 Dinomorphia, any 2 Dinomorphia monsters, as long as they have different names. And as you can see, that's a lot of attack points for a level 6 fusion that only requires 2 materials. Well, that's because she loses attack points equal to your life points. Yes, that does mean that she will have some pretty bizarre attack points. I have made the life points of both duelists look like this duel is involving Panic from the DM anime. So yeah, she's good. She can also also at the cost of half your life points, she can banish a trap from your graveyard. Banishing the trap as cost. Do not let your opponent DD Crow Kentragina to try to stop the effect. She banishes the trap for cost. Anyway, as I was saying, by banishing a trap and paying half your life points, again, that is cost, she can copy the effect of the trap you banished. So, of course, you can only banish Dinomorphia normal traps by this effect, but still, you can copy Dinomorphia Frenzy, Dinomorphia Alert. This is the reason why people argue you only need 1 copy of Alert. However, there's an argument for 2 copies of Alert. I'm personally in the 2 copies of Alert category, and she is the only reason the Dinomorphia Brute sees play. Otherwise, it wouldn't. Also, I love these emerald sleeves I got for my Dinomorphia deck. Up next, we have 3 copies of Dinomorphia Frenzy Fodder, Dinomorphia Stealthbergia. All of its text is irrelevant. I think I've summoned this card in all of the duels I've played with this deck. I think I have summoned Stealthbergia twice. I've been playing this deck for the better part of a year. You are only using this card to send it to the graveyard off of Dinomorphia Frenzy. He's got a niche burn effect. If your opponent uses a monster effect, it can burn the opponent, but this card just isn't playable due to the fact that it prevents you from paying life points if you have less than 2,000. You want to be paying life points. This type of effect would be really good in like counter fairies, but in Dinomorphia, it just doesn't quite doesn't quite stick the landing, because I want to have like 200 life points, 100 life points, 50 life points even. So this way, Rexterm and Kentrigina are as strong as possible. Kentrigina on the actual like attacking side, and Rexterm on the side of his effect. This card is like, this card exists. I'm pretty sure this card was made purposely bad, so this way we wouldn't feel bad sending it to the graveyard for Dinomorphia Frenzy. And honestly, I'm kind of happy that we do have a card that exists solely to be sent to the graveyard of Dinomorphia Frenzy. The meat and potatoes of the deck. Dinomorphia Rexterm. If your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters they control, who has attack points equal to or greater than your current life points. Keep in mind, this is not a skill drain. And if they have a passive effect, that will still go off. Just as an example, Dark Magician Girl's effect to gain the attack points, attack points for based off the number of Dark Magicians and Dark Magician and Magician of Black Chaos is in the graveyard. That wouldn't be prevented, but Magician Souls' effect to send a spell and traps to the graveyard to draw cards, that would get negated. Assuming that, you know, the Magician Souls has had its attack points modified, because the Magician Souls has 0, but you get what I'm trying to say. He also has an effect that is a quick effect, where you can pay half your life points to set the attack points of all monsters your opponent currently controls to be your current life points. And this is after you pay half your life points. So in other words, if your opponent summons out a problematic monster and you don't want it using its effect, you can just pay half your life points to just say, yeah, that monster's not using its effects. Also, there's a combo you can do with Ferret Flames, where you use this to pay half your life points and flip over Ferret Flames, and now your opponent can only keep one of their monsters. It's so funny when it goes off without a hitch. Up next, I'm just going to go over all these both at the same time. These are the only two super polymerization targets I'm currently running. This gets rid of stuff in Malice, and this is just Garura. Two monsters of the same type and attribute, but different names. So, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot for super poly targets for Rizio, but I got stuff that can deal with Blue Eyes. I got stuff that can deal with Malice. So, it's not all bad, but, you know, it's not great. I wish I had something for Malice, but there's just not Malice for Rizio, but there just isn't a whole lot. Up next, we got Lagia and Dolka. This is a Solemn Judgment on legs. This is an Imperm on legs. You're very rarely summoning this thing because you have Rexterm on field. However, it's nice to have. So, yeah. Since it's nice to have, we run it. But you're mainly making him. These are good cards, but, you know, this one is situational, and this is, you are making this whenever you need a rank for, whenever you just need a rank for. Up next, we have a bit of an interesting pick. Number 39, Utopia. No, I'm not running any other Utopia monsters. We are only running Utopia, the base Utopia. I needed to find a replacement for Abyss Dweller, so I was looking through my binder, and I couldn't really find much that felt like it helped out the deck. But then I ran into this copy of Utopia, and I was like, it's not the best. However, one issue this deck does have is that if, for whatever reason, Rexterm's effect to Dark Honest the opponent, because, fun fact, you can use his effect, his pay half your life points to set the attack points effect, you can use that during the damage step. But let's just say for whatever reason that's not enough, or like your opponent has direct attackers, you can make Utopia, number 39 Utopia, to negate the attacks. We're actually using Utopia for the reason it was intended to be used. We're not using it to evolve into Utopia the Lightning. We're just interested in having something that can negate attacks, as niche as that is. It's helpful in this deck because of decks that can attack directly like Watt, and decks like Makonko and Yubel. Now, if we're going up against Makonko and Yubel, you've probably already lost anyway, so Utopia isn't doing you a whole lot of good, but what can be annoying, but the match isn't unwinnable, so Utopia can help you out there. As long as you, of course, you survive the OTK. Up next, we've got Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. It's Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. And then we got SP and IP. This is one of the best cards in the game. This is what allows this to be one of the best cards in the game, and also make it during your opponent's turn. And the reason this is the best card in the game is that this card can make this card during your opponent's turn. This lets you link summon during your opponent's turn. This says, oh, I was summoned using a link fusion exceeds or whatever. Yeah, say goodbye to some of your stuff. You can, if you are in desperate need of an SP Little Knight that can banish something from the opponent's field, you can use a Kentrigina. It will still proc its effect. However, it is better to use IP Masquerena to make the SP Little Knight. Onto our side deck. So we got 2 copies of Draw and Lockbird. For, as I explained, sometimes Draw just kills a deck. So we run the Draw to help, kill that deck. And then we got 3 Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. They're just another 3 copies of Imperm if we feel that we need another 3 copies of Imperm. Up next, we have 3 copies of Kashtira Fenrir. This is another one of the changes that was made to the deck outside of the replacing Abyss Dweller with Utopia. I happened to find my 3rd copy of Fenrir. I knew I had one. So these give us going second options. Fenrir can special summon itself just by us not controlling any monsters, then can add any Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand, including another copy of Kashtira Fenrir. So not only do we get something on board that will allow us to play the game going second, because this deck has a terrible going second, we can get another Fenrir to our hand. So this way we have a comeback option if our opponent outs our board, which is relatively easy to do because we went second. Up next, we have 1 copy of Loving Defender Forever. As I said, Yubel kind of murders this deck. This gives us a Super Polymerization target for Yubel. Yubel is starting to fall out of favor, but it still pops up every once in a while. And it pops up just enough that I feel it's worth running a copy of Loving Defender Forever in the side deck. So this way, if the deck pops up, we aren't completely screwed. It doesn't really matter what this card actually does because it only helps us against Yubel. But it turns our opponent's Yubel board into this thing. We use Super Polymerization to turn our opponent's board into this thing, and then we just burn our opponent for a bunch of damage. Up next, we got 3 copies of Evenly Matched, a copy of Gozen Match, a copy of Rivalry of the Warlords, and a copy of Anti-Spell Fragrance. We're going second, board clear, a bunch of floodgates, so this way our opponent has a hard time playing the game. There's not a whole lot else to say about the deck. Normally, I would try to go into combos the deck can do, but this deck isn't really a combo deck. It's a slow-paced control. Well, actually, no. It's a fast-paced control deck. So there's not really a whole lot that the deck wants to do other than set a bunch of cards and end its turn. Maybe you'll summon out a Theresia, but that's all there really is to it. So, yeah. If you would like tips on piloting the deck, let me know in the DM in the comments, and I can definitely supply you with points. Because as I said, I've been playing this deck for the better part of the year. I can tell you what to add off Theresia, what to mill off of Diplos, and when. Obviously, sometimes it's situational. However, like going first, what you're sending off of Theresia or milling off of Diplos, is, well, yeah, it's depending on what your hand is looking like. There's some pretty obvious answers. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about piling this deck in the comments. That's all for this video, and I will see you next time.